This is one of the comic books that I've wrote. If you lose a LARP character, it is devastating. If you think losing a D&D character is bad, this is somebody who, if you play them long enough, they are a part of you.
So often these video games now, they like force you into this railroaded experience of like, this is what the game is capable of. You have zero interpretation of what it can do.
But they renamed it to Magic Fest, which was a big controversy because there was a once a year gathering of stage magicians in Las Vegas called Magic Fest.
Oh no.
Think responsibly, viewers. Hi everybody, Tim from Shot Takes here. This is totally not the third time we're doing this, but we're doing it. You haven't been to Shot Takes before. It's a talk show where we bring on a guest. Tonight's guest is going to be Brad Jones over here. And my co-host here, Dave, he's going to be doing the technical stuff behind the scenes, looking up stuff for us and making sure everything goes smoothly. We go over 6 questions, 20 minutes per each question. And after each question, we both, me and the guest, are going to take a shot from this shot chamber here. If you want to full screen it just so he can, so sure. The guest. So without further ado, Brad, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for our audience?
Yeah, my name is Brad Jones. I'm a author for Maelstrom Media Comics. I'm also currently writing a book and also doing my own line of comics that will be out hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, other than writing, I do a lot of nerd activities. And when I'm not writing, I usually drive.
All right. So tonight's episode is going to be centered around nerdy stuff, stuff like D&D, Magic the Gathering, all those kind of topics. I'm a big nerd myself, and I made a lot of nerd friends along the way. And Brad is an expert nerd, for lack of a better term. So we should have some fun here tonight talking about nerd culture type stuff. So without further ado, you want to go and give me the first question, Dave, so
sure
we can
thing.
do it for Brad. The shots in here are not randomized today. We're just going to be doing E and J Apple, but normally we would do these.
Yep. All right. So question number 1: what is better, online or over the table D&D? Take our shot, and then you can stew on that. Again, what's better, online or over the table D&D?
Well, they both definitely have pros and cons. Online makes it easier for adults, I think. You know, you have all these stories about people who can't keep a D&D game running. As adults, I've been in a campaign going on 6 years now. Where we're all, I think the youngest one of us is 30.
Okay.
So, you know, if life stuff comes up, people go on vacation, work, whatever, it's easy to cancel. Nobody's already planning on leaving the house or anything like that. There's that. Then there's the ease of having access to all the information. You can just type something in if nobody knows like how grapple checks work.
Okay. Instead of spooling through like a big book or whatever, right?
True. So there's that. But I think it's more fun in person.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't get the same thrill of rolling dice when you click a button and then a number generator just says, hey, this is what you rolled.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we do it through Discord for the speaking part and Roll20 for everything else. Roll20 is nice for it. You can have tokens that you can get from anywhere. You can have them custom made, whatever. You put them on, no problem. Maps are easy to put out, sometimes easy to put out. It's easier to keep track of all the numbers when they're just on the computer there. And it takes away the math, which, you know, some people would think that's a good thing. Some people might not. But yeah, in person, it's much more fun. You're with people instead of just like sitting at your computer slowly paling.
Do you notice the difference like whenever you're playing in person compared to online? Are the campaigns like, you know, more combat focused, I guess you could say, or they move faster online? Or
they move faster online because like I said, you don't have to do the math, and you can set up macros, not micros.
Yeah.
You can set up macros. So ahead of time, you're like, oh, my attack bonus is +4. So I can just put this in and be like basic attack, and it automatically rolls a d20 plus 4. And then like if you have something that's not a macro, you can just go in and be like, all right, the total additives or negatives are this amount. You hit the dice roll. You could roll 100 d20 plus 6,000 and it'll be done like that. And you don't have to sit there and count everything.
How much did you play like D&D in real life as opposed to online? What, like a percentage, like how much you played one or the other?
Recently, since I've had a child, it's entirely online. Before that, it was entirely in person. So I think I've probably played more in person, especially because at one point in time, I had 3 games a week. It was exhausting. Don't recommend doing that many a week. It's hard to keep track of, but it's still more fun in person. Like, we want to meet up every once in a while in person. Like, at the end of a big story arc or something, it would be nice to sit down, see people's faces, you know. But then people don't, well, they still get distracted, but they get distracted in different ways. Like, you have the entire internet always at your disposal while you're playing online. So it's easy to not be paying attention. We have one person who has a soundboard, and they'll just, like, randomly play things. Yeah, like, we finished a boss battle recently, and they played the Final Fantasy VII victory music. And, like, stuff like that.
So do you have more, like, I guess, like exciting memories online or in real life, I guess?
The memories usually are better in real life. It's easier to go through online. I was DMing a encounter where they were in the mountains, and they found a old mining like house, and it was haunted. But so they went in and they had to figure out what the haunts were going on. But meanwhile, a blizzard had started outside because of a Wendigo. They didn't know it was a Wendigo at the time, but so they were inside of a haunted mansion, couldn't leave, or haunted house, and couldn't leave because of the blizzard. They're like, oh, we cleared off the haunts. We'll just stay here until the blizzard gets better. But because it was a Wendigo, they have a supernatural ability to cause blizzards. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually, once they were completely snowed in, the Wendigo attacked and like tore off the roof of the thing, and it was this huge, like, they had to deal with the weather and all this stuff, and I was able to have like multiple tabs open, so I knew what was going on for everything. And I was told by my players that it was the best encounter they have ever had in their 20 years of tabletop gaming.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds creative.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun setting up, like having a Wendigo. They were like mid levels because Wendigos are actually terrifying in D&D.
So what does playing online, other than just like making math fast, what advantages does that offer over like real life, and what the real life advantages do you get?
So online offers, we don't have to meet up. That's a big one. They live an hour and a half from where I live. Most of them, like some further out, a little closer, but yeah, they live about an hour and a half away. So meeting up for an hour, or driving an hour and a half to get to a location, we do it on a Thursday night. So, people work, we'd be able to play for like an hour, maybe, if we're lucky. Because, they always have things going on the weekends. One of them is a storyteller for a LARP, a local LARP. So he is always busy on the weekends. Another one has a job that he can just randomly get called out. He's technically on call 24/7, but he works like maybe 10 hours a week. But he's salaried, so he's got a pretty good job, but he just randomly be like, oh, guys, I'm going to have to get off, and I have to drive to my location, but I'll jump back on Discord while on my phone while I'm driving to get there.
So is that worth it? Would you just rather have just like the whole group committed to that, that session?
I mean, we like to be, we usually meet up every week, but things happen. We're, adults. Around Thanksgiving to Christmas, we usually take that month off because so much family stuff's going on. But yeah, unless something happens, we're usually there.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the big thing for me is like just building good memories, and it's kind of hard to invest yourself in the game if you're, in my opinion, virtually. You can have some fun moments, but like I feel like you lose out on a lot of like the nuances, like people's emotions and stuff like that. All you get is disembodied voices around like a table.
Yeah, that is like I said, they both have pros and cons. In person, it's much more lively usually. You can read people better. it's more fun to be in person. You know, you can bribe the DM with snacks. Like, hey guys, I brought a pizza. Can you ignore that nat 1?
That's so funny.
I don't want to die tonight.
Yeah, and the other aspect, what you said you use Roll20 for your online. Well, what are like the popular platforms? I know that myself, I use Tabletop Simulator, and that offers a lot of advantages. Being able to all the assets are free, I guess, after you pay the entry costs.
Yeah. So Roll20, I started using it before I had even heard of Tabletop Simulator. It is a board literally designed to play online. Like they have character sheets for pretty much every tabletop game just added in. You can set it up. We play Pathfinder, which is essentially D&D 3.75 when they switched from 3.5 to 4th edition and nobody liked 4th edition.
Is this like made by like Wizards of the Coast, I believe?
No, they don't make this. This is a third party that does, like I said, you can see Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, Marvel Multiverse. They have literally every single system that is popular and even some niche ones available to be used.
How do they not run into like copyright issues or anything?
It's just a third party thing. It's just like having the an PFSRD online. It's just information that you have available. This is nobody's earning money from it. They have like the D&D adventure paths on there, but you have to pay for them. So my assumption is that for every one that you get through there, they pay Wizards of the Coast.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What's a PFSRD?
It is the PFSRD is the Pathfinder role-playing game. It literally has every information in every book that isn't an adventure path available on it. So if you pull it up, you could see what every class in the game is, all the monsters, every role, anything that's for sale, stuff like that. It's just that's one of the advantages of playing. Yeah, it's one of the advantages to playing online is that you can just pull it up and you have whatever. Like, currently we're running 3 campaigns simultaneously. We're switching between DMs. We play for a while with one DM, so we don't get DM burnout. We switch to the next. We're playing one where I'm the DM, and it is a 3-part adventure. They did their first one where they went from level 1 to level 18, 19 or so, and then they fought this wizard from an ancient civilization who had put himself into his own demiplane and like put himself in stasis for a time for him to come back because an event called the World Fall was happening, which was like the end of the world. So he was like, I'm going to come back when things are good. But they stopped him because that entire civilization was run by evil wizards. So they finished that campaign, and the next campaign in that I'm running is set 5 years in the future, and they're starting with new PCs, but their old PCs, they had to give me at the end of the thing what they were doing. They're influencing things in the background. And then this one is going to explore more into the ancient civilization. They're about halfway through it right now, around level 10 or so. And they will, at the end, be fighting the old king of that civilization. And the final one in that will be another 5 years in the future, and they can pick one of their 2 previous PCs to have like major events happening in the background around them. And it's going to involve some time travel and the rest of the wizard court that existed at the time and what they've been doing in the meantime.
I watched a short documentary by, I think it was by Vox. They interviewed some guy who, quote unquote, has the longest standing D&D campaign. I think it was like 40 years, if I'm not mistaken. And how do you feel about like your characters? You know, you get to level 18, 19, and then you even though they're still in the background of your story, you making a new character. Do you feel like you're losing that investment? Because one thing I will say about that Vox documentary is when players lost their characters, like they didn't get to keep playing the game. When they died, and they weren't allowed to come back.
Yeah, no, I think that having investment in characters is great, but I think once you get to a certain point in the D&D, you know, the Roll20 systems, it just gets untenable. Like once you hit like level 12, things start getting into what they call rocket tag territory. It's who can just like, you'll do an encounter and in real time, it'll take like 2 hours, but you'll have gone through like 1 to 3 rounds. So like in the game, it's taken 6 to 18 seconds for an encounter. But because so much crazy shit is happening at all times, the higher the numbers go, the more untenable things get. So, you know, level there's like almost never you're going to hit level 20 and stay at level 20 and keep going. At level 20, you're essentially a demigod, and it's hard to balance encounters around that. So it's I think it's better when if your character is lived, that it's still having an effect in the game. Like you have said, this is what I wanted my character to do. One of my characters in that game who finished was a wizard who made a deal with essentially the devil, Asmodeus, and he became a lich. And he hid it from the party, including the party paladin. But in the final encounter, he something happened, and he kind of got mind controlled for a little while and was on the side of the bad guy. So they had like a level 25 wizard and a level 18 lich slinging spells at them while they were trying to figure out what's going on. It was grand in scale, like they were in a demi-plane and all this other stuff, and there were dragons flying around and giants. It was a good time, but you can't keep that up indefinitely. It loses any type of
Stakes.
Yeah, stakes. Like it's easier to do stuff that's smaller and slowly build up, because at some point you can fight 100 dragons and you're like, ooh, we did it again, guys. Like my wizard now lives on the sun because I can. I just don't like people. Good luck getting a door-to-door salesman up there.
So you mentioned hosting your own campaigns.
Yeah.
How long does it take to typically like make like a session? Do you like kind of like force them through like a certain story arc, or do you actually give them like, is it like an illusion of choice, or do you actually like give them the ability to choose where they go?
So there's two different ways to do it. One is that running through pre-made adventure paths, which is much easier, much less stuff to put out and figure out. But it's more railroaded. Like you can do stuff and you can do it in unexpected ways, but you still kind of have to find out to be on the track. Like there's a lot of story hooks. If you ignore them, you're not progressing and doing things that are prepared. I have done both ways. Adventure paths are easier to do, but I had a campaign in the past which was I had just a rotating set of players, and it was they were a mercenary company. And they made characters at level 1, and then when they got to level 5, they'd make another level 1 character. But their level 5 characters were also available too. Depending on who showed up would be which group of mercenaries would go out. And it was an evolving world. It took hundreds of hours to set up the world and be like, all right, this is the stuff that's going on. You can do anything, but be warned, I'm not telling you what's safe. Like it's just a living world. Go out. But that took so much effort. And once I became an adult with a full-time job and a family, it was untenable to maintain that level of stuff. The best way to do it is to have, if you're making your own campaign, is to have a general idea of what you want to happen, but be prepared for them to get stuck or distracted on something that you didn't even consider. Just be prepared to wing things. That's probably the best advice I could give to DMs, is that yes, you want to have preparation, you want to have a story, but don't be upset when you spent 10 hours on this one character who you thought was really cool, and you're like, all right, this guy is going to be a recurring NPC, whatever, and then they come and they see this farmer who's hauling a cart of oranges, and they're immediately like, this is the guy, we're going to protect him with our lives. They're like, fuck, I didn't even come up with a name for him. In my notes, he's just orange farmer in the background that they weren't even supposed to buy off of him. Like, he was just a background set piece, and now they're in love with him. Like, you got to be prepared for that. I had a friend who, he was trying to DM a campaign, and his party members went behind his back and decided, instead of buying adventuring gear, that they could make a pretty sweet farm with 4 people with starting gold. And they started a farm while he's dropping plot hook after plot hook, and they're just ignoring it and farming.
I kind of love that, honestly.
I love it.
Yeah. So eventually the DM got fed up, and he had bandits come in the night and slaughter their favorite cow, and that is what got them on the adventuring path. So you got to think outside the box when your players just do their own thing. You got to be like, all right, I can't force them to go with what I'm trying to do, but we can try and nudge them in progressively annoying ways.
Totally fair. The one other thing I wanted to talk about with like D&D, like storytelling, you mentioned getting bogged down by the numbers. there were systems like GURPS and I think like D20 Modern back when I was like playing the game back in high school, ages and ages ago. But it wasn't as focused on the numbers. It was just about telling the story, and then like you just roll either successes or failures, which is essentially what it comes down to anyway, right?
Yeah, that's great for different systems. D&D, anything that's based on the D&D T20 system is inherently designed to be numbers. So if you want a pure storytelling game, there are much better systems for it. Back 20 years ago, maybe 15, somewhere around there, I actually designed a D6 system that was a mecha-based thing that was split pretty evenly between storytelling and mech combat. I don't know how balanced it was. I was very young when I designed it, but I did a play test of it with some people, and they had fun, even if the boss in my campaign just like rolled exploding D6s and did like 60 some damage to them by shooting a volley of missiles, all of them. And I was like, well, that's what happens when a generation 13 mech goes up against your generation 8 mechs, I guess. I should have, but I guess it does sound like it could have been balanced considering how old the mechs they were piloting was. But it was based around like they had pilot skills and their basic character skills, and their pilot skills were played into their mechs, where their mechs had like, this is the maximum amount of stuff you can do depending on how new the mech is, the generation of it. So if your pilot skill exceeds that, you can only get up to that point in the mech. So like, it was interesting, but I don't know if it was good.
That movie called that boxing robot movie. Was it
with
Chappie or not?
Chappie, I think.
No, Chappie was one of them. There was another one.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Was that?
It was actually a pretty good movie.
Was that Hugh Jackman?
Yeah, Hugh Jackman.
He was like the coach to the boxing robot.
Yeah, I love that movie. And they had that old like it was just like a test dummy robot. They used it to just like beat all these like champion robots and just like.
Yeah, it was essentially Rocky but mechs.
It was Real Steel.
Real Steel.
Yep.
That's the one. You haven't seen it, check it out. It's actually pretty. But all right, you ready to move on to topic number 2?
Sure, let's move on.
Take this little cap off. Might be like on some of the tape there. All right, cheers.
All right, question number 2. Is Magic the Gathering Arena good or bad for paperback Magic the Gathering? Magic the Gathering being a card game for those at home.
Yeah,
collectible card game.
The answer to that is yes.
It is bad for him.
No, it is yes. It is good and bad.
Oh.
Is it this or this? Yes. Okay, so it's the one way, not the other way. No, it is great in general for the game. It allows people to play more often, to be able to not leave their house if they can't or whatever. They don't have to travel far for tournaments because they host online ones. But at the same time, that's the same reason why it's bad for Magic, paperback. Card prices stay increasing at all times. Just, I guess that's what it does now. But ever since they put Magic Arena out, and then they had the excuse not to have to rent out facilities and not to support their Pro Tour as much, the worst thing that they did, they thankfully walked it back after a year. They went from the Pro Tour to the Pro Players League, I think is what it was called, and it ended up being the top 32 people, just like with events and stuff, got to go to this online only tournament, and then they win a ton of money. And then they'd also give them streamer contracts and stuff like that, and everyone's like, woo, great for those 32 people. But it became so inclusive that it killed the dream of like the semi-pro, which is where I was sitting. Before I had a kid, I would be going out to every Pro Tour or big tournament that I could within like a 3 to 6 mile drive. And I'd be like grinding.
3 to 6 mile drive?
Hours. Yeah, if it wasn't down the street, it wasn't worth it.
So you're playing with Timmy down the road.
Yeah. But
You're getting it now, Timmy.
at the time, I was really into it. I played when I was a kid. My cousin used to babysit me while my mom worked all the time. My dad worked one day and then 2 nights a week because he was on disability, so he was mid, health issues, didn't work much. But my cousin used to watch me on Monday mornings while my dad was at work during the summer or whatever. But he introduced me to Magic the Gathering back 1996, I believe it was. I was around 6 to 8 years old, so 96, 98. Pretty early in the Magic lifespan. Magic started in 1990 with their alpha set. But he would, set me in front of the computer and take a nap and be like, here, play Diablo 2 with this 8-year-old playing Diablo and running away from demons, and it was great. But then, he also showed me Magic the Gathering. And I played, tabletop Magic for a while, but I didn't really have anybody to play it with, so it just kind of went on the back burner. And then I went to college, and my frat that I joined was, how there's, the party frat and the jock frat. Mine was the nerd frat.
There aren't many of those.
No, there aren't, but it was great. They were all into Magic the Gathering, role-playing games, video games. They still had parties, obviously. It was college frat. Okay.
One thing I will say about that is that I also went to college, and I wasn't a part of a fraternity or anything like that, but I would go to the EDM parties, and that's where most of the nerd people are. And I still, even though everybody there I could talk to, I think some of the people there I was talking to about playing Smites or something like that at the time, and I was like, I hate this. I hate just being here with a red solo cup and can't hear anybody. You have to lean and what'd you say? It's I hate that so much. I'd much rather it be a more close knit thing.
Yeah. It was definitely a close knit frat. We had a thing that we would do. We during the week of finals or whatever, the frat president was like, all right, no loud sounds in the hallways or after midnight. So he came up with that, and we're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Hey, let's get the entire frat to stand outside of his door every night at 11:59 and do a Dragon Ball Z power up. So for a full solid minute, everyone in the frat would go to his room and go for 60 solid seconds, and the second it hit midnight, we just disperse. Yeah. It was fantastic.
If it was me and my friends, it would have been the Halo hum.
Yeah.
Because at least he can't be mad about that.
So we had the tradition of the 11:59 power up there, but yeah, they got me back into Magic the Gathering. There was a nearby semi-competitive game shop, card shop, where we went and got our asses handed to us because we were just playing for fun. And I was like, I don't like to lose.
No.
So I got really into Magic again.
So you actually powered up.
Oh, I
screamed.
I spent hundreds of dollars, powered up, watched videos. I won a thing and got taught how to draft by a pro Magic player. And then I started the grind. I would go to every Friday Night Magic that I could. As a poor college student, it was once a month. Then I left college, but I didn't leave Magic. I got even more into it. I had more disposable income. Traveling's fun. So just going on a road trip, even if you did terrible at the tournament, it was a good time. But I couldn't afford to take a flight to Las Vegas for the $100,000 tournaments or anything like that. I was like, if I do well enough and win, they give you flight tickets in addition to the cash prize and all that, and the invites. Well, I was grinding pretty good between their what were they called at the time? I think they were just, they're called I don't even remember, but they had their Wizards of the Coast sanctioned events, where Grand Prix, that was it. They were the Magic Grand Prix. You would go, if you got into the top 8, you were guaranteed an invite to the Pro Tour. They would give you a ticket to wherever the Pro Tour was, and then you'd win a progressively increasing cash prize. And then you'd also earn pro points, and depending on your amount of pro points, you could just start getting money from showing up to tournaments. And the dream was yeah, anybody can theoretically have a run really well and make it to the Pro Tour just in one tournament. In addition to that, Star City Games was doing their Star City Invitational. They would go across the country. They had their own third-party ring of stuff. And I actually was doing an online blog of Magic the Gathering. I called it Next Level Magic or something like that, based after somebody else who wrote an article called Next Level Magic. But I would do tournament reports on how I did at each tournament. And I had one where I actually went with you.
Yeah.
I don't remember where we were at, but it was a Star City. I think it was the one that we went with Ray.
Oh, Ray Rapco.
Yeah, I think we went with, it was the one we went with him. But I got into day 2, and I also was on a feature match against a seasoned pro player, and I beat him, and I like linked it into my thing and timestamped it and all that. But when they switched over to online, most of that died off. Star City Games still runs theirs. The Magic Grand Prix are gone. They renamed them to Magic Fest, and there was a big controversy.
Wait, Grand Prix are gone? I didn't know that.
They were gone. They brought them back, but to a much more limited degree. But they renamed it to Magic Fest, which was a big controversy because there was a once a year gathering of stage magicians in Las Vegas called Magic Fest.
Oh no.
And Wizards of the Coast went, here's our new Grand Prix, we're renaming it, restructuring it, it's called Magic Fest. The Association of Stage Magicians sued them and lost because they weren't as big.
They should have challenged each other to a Magic battle to the death.
Yeah.
Magic the Gathering versus Stage Magic.
Yeah, so there's a big controversy with that. It's still called Magic Fest, so I suppose that Hasbro Wizards of the Coast won. But Magic Online, not Magic Online, that's a whole different thing other than Arena. Magic Online has existed for a long time. It is essentially a PDF game. The graphics don't exist. Its interface is bad. It costs money. You can buy and rent cards that only exist there.
There was an economy in that game.
Yes, there was an economy in there. But then they released Arena, and that became much more popular. It's free to play. You do better if you spend money, like any free-to-play game. But if you're good at the game, you don't have to spend money. The way I do it is I spent a little bit of money. I got like the welcome bundle or whatever, the newcomer bundle. And if you're good at drafting, you can transform your gold into a good amount of gems, which is the premium currency. And gems get you into the weekend tournaments, or, just buying packs. But you earn packs from drafting too. I don't think I've ever bought a single pack in that game. And I have hundreds of wild cards, which is their system of things. They have common, uncommon, rare, and mythic wild cards, and you earn them depending on things. But I get nearly complete collections, and I have any deck that I want to play at any given time. And I think since the game came out, when I started playing, I think it was around COVID, I think over its lifetime, I probably put $200 into it, which is a bit more than I probably should have. But
I mean, I think if you play a game enough, I would. So, like, if I spend a significant, like, for when I played Hearthstone a lot, and I thought it was totally justified to spend $120 on Hearthstone, maybe even up to $200 like you did, a year. If I played the game, like, probably like a good 20 hours a week. It was a gross amount of hours a week, but I played that game that much. I'm like, all right, well, I might as well spend money on it. I want to support them, so, like, I don't really want to say that, like, getting your money's worth is good, but I don't know if totally free is always the answer.
Yeah, the way I spend it, I'd be considered a dolphin. I don't know if you know the terminology.
I've never heard of dolphin. Is this a kink thing?
No. So for mobile games and games with a pay to service, like it's a free to play game, but you can pay to get something. There are different tiers of players. People who spend no money are obviously free to play, and then people who spend a ton of money, they're called whales. In some games, they have like people who spend like thousands of dollars a week, and they're called a Kraken market. Because they're so big, they spend so much money on it. But you need a good amount of free-to-play players in any of your game, and then you need an amount of whales or krakens or whatever. And then there are people like me who occasionally spend a little bit of money. They're in between whales and free-to-play, so they call them dolphins. So that's the terminology of free-to-play
Why are
economy.
they not just fish?
I don't know. I didn't come up with it. I just know what it's called.
This is all bullshit. Just like the Gen X and Gen Zoomer shit.
Yeah.
Like, who makes that
Form
stuff
to
up?
chaos.
But
Yes.
so my tier of playing would be considered a dolphin, I suppose. If I like every set dropped $100 to get new cards and cosmetics, I'd be considered a whale. Me, I'm like, oh, there's the way they do it now, which killed the Grand Prix essentially, is that just about every weekend they do a tournament. And either it's an invitational or they do limited tournaments and stuff like that. And I try and play in them, as many of them as I can, but they cost gems or an excessive amount of gold, like 50,000 gold, which is huge. But you can play in this limited tournament. They just changed it to make it easier to progress, which is nice. But it used to be that you would play 7 games. I'm going with best of 1 because it's different in best of 3 for limited. But you would play 7 games, and if you got to 7 wins before you got to 2 losses, so if you lost twice, you were done. But if you got to 7 wins, you would get into day 2. And you would also, so you would play on Saturday, get your 7 wins. At 7 wins, you'd earn 10,000 gems, which is the entry fee back, and that's about $25-ish.
Yeah.
And then you get into day 2. Day 2 was you play 4 rounds, and depending on how well you did in day 1, if you got 0 losses, you would have 2 losses to give, and if you had 1 loss, you'd have 1 loss to give. But you would play 4 rounds, and assuming you went 7-0 in day 1, you could do 4 wins with 1 loss, and then you'd move on to the second part of day 2, where you play 3 rounds with however many losses you have remaining. If you got to the second part of it with, if you lost immediately, you'd earn $500. If you won once and got to a total of 6 wins in day 2, you'd earn $1,000. If you got all of it, you get $2,000.
Jeez.
And then in addition to that, you're also put into their Magic Arena Invitational, which is a invite only. Obviously, you get like a little coin that shows up in the top of your screen to say, hey, you're invited to the next invitational. But yeah, you can just earn money playing this, but you have to be good. Like, you can luck into it, but it's very hard. I have never hit the 500. I have gotten 20,000 gems like 4 times, which is 1 loss, like right before earning real money. It's so disappointing.
That's interesting too, because the whole aspect of it not being like a tournament system typically of like you fight this player and then based on their MMR you fight another player, right? That's how it normally works in every gaming thing. You just play to get a certain number of wins. I would think that there would be more people who end up in that bracket of things, right? Like,
you would think. Apparently, it wasn't inclusive enough for them. It's making them a ton of money. They do at least 1 a month, sometimes multiples. But it has to be making them a ton of money because they just made it even more inclusive. Instead of 2 wins on day 1, now you can. It's 3 or 2 losses on day 1. It's now 3, which makes it that much easier to get further. And it's used
almost
to
a
be
50% win rate at that point.
It used to be if you got to 7 wins, you'd end up in their invitational, and their invitational would take the top 32 players of that tournament to be put into the Pro Tour or like the World Championship or whatever. Now that's uncapped. If you get to the 7 win, if you get to a certain number of wins in day 2, you're into the invitational. And then if you get to a certain number of wins in the invitational, you get to go to the Pro Tour and the World Championship. And it, like I said, it used to be the top 32. Now it's anybody who gets to that number. So they've realized that, like I said, paper Magic, which is much more fun. Everybody says it's not Magic without the Gathering. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Yep. So there's that. But it's more fun to see. Like, when I used to go to these tournaments all the time, I would see people who I would make friends with because I saw them, whether it was Baltimore, DC, New York, Georgia, wherever.
Yeah.
Like, I would see them at all these different places, and we would, like, there was one guy, I can't think of his name anymore because I haven't seen him in years. Pre-COVID.
So sad.
We played in a tournament in Pittsburgh. In round 1, we were playing the same deck. He beat me in game 3, but every after every round, we would meet back up and compare our results and just like talk. And then I went to a tournament in Baltimore and I saw him and we hung out in between rounds and talked. And every time I'd see him, we'd hang out and we'd get to know each other better. Like it was great. Like you just make friends because like that's why Magic the Gathering was so successful compared to something like the Dragon Ball Z card game, which exists, but you're not going to see that level of 30 years.
Never meet your heroes, though. I will say, never meet your heroes
yeah,
because
when
sorry, I want to say this real quick. I had a obsession. I used to watch the Star City Games Opens. They used to put VODs on YouTube, and I'd sit there like, oh, what's the cool new decks people are playing? I love building my own stuff. I don't like playing whatever people play. And there's this other player called Jeff Hoogland, and he would build his own decks all the time too. And I'm like, man, I really like this guy's decks. He's got all these cool ideas. He's like really like fighting the meta without fighting, like playing all the same decks. And then I played against him. And I got this cool, I think it was a collective company deck before that card became
Coco,
busted. Yeah, it was just like a nonsense life gain collected company deck. And I played against him. He was playing, I think, like Red Blue Dragons or something. And he was so upset that like a homebrew deck was beating him that he couldn't even be bothered to be civil about like, you know, the match. Like I did beat him, you know, not to brag or anything, but I did. And I was expecting him to be, you know, respectful, sportsmanship, not at all that. And it's very frustrating because I did look up to him before that moment. Like, man, this is somebody who builds his own decks. Is like, this is who I want to be, the professional player killer. You know what I'm saying?
I used to watch Jeff Hoogland on Twitch. He's stopped Magic. He plays Marvel Snap now.
God bless.
Yeah. So, but same thing. At tournaments, Brad Nelson, I've met him, and he acted like he was so above everyone because he got paid to play the game. Like he would be like, you'd go up for your pairings and you're trying to go up, and he would just be like out of the way, and he'd just like bulldoze his way through people.
Oh my God.
And then, like I said, I had that match against a pro player, which I linked. It was should I name drop these people? Anyhow, Todd Anderson. I got paired up against him. I'm like, oh, cool. I know him. I follow him. He's interesting. And we're sitting, because I was undefeated at the time there, and we're sitting there, and he's like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. I'm like, nice to meet you. And we're talking a little bit, and they're announcing the future matches, and they're like, this is the main future match. He's like, all right, we still have a chance to be a feature match. And then we were, and he was like, all right, cool. So we go to the feature match, and then I beat him. And it kind of was a bullshit way that I beat him. Like, he was playing Mono Black Devotion, and I was playing Mono Blue Devotion back during the original Theros run. And the way I beat him in Game 3 was I went Master of Waves turn 4, Master of Waves turn 5, Master of Waves turn 6, which is just insane. For those of you who don't know, it was a card that when you put it down, it made 0/1 tokens equal to the number of blue mana symbols on your board at the time. When it came into the battlefield, and then it also gave them all +1/+1. So I dropped it, made like 4 1/2s, and the next turn I made like 7 2/3s, and then it just like snowballed insanely. And he was so butthurt. Like, he was so pissy. He was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do against that. And he like I won.
It's a card game, though. Like, that's part of it.
I understand. It's technically their job, and they're earning their livelihood through it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a game, and you know you're going to lose sometimes.
Right.
I understand getting upset, but don't take it out on the other player unless they're an asshole too. Yeah. But he was like, I remember vividly, because he was fairly civil when we first sat down, but then I beat him in game through, and he literally said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do against that, scooped up his cards, and I'm like, good game, and he just fucking like turned and stormed off. I couldn't even say good game.
I would love it if he just like drop kicked me.
Just on camera. But yeah, like I said, online kind of is killing in paper, which is a shame. It's much more fun being in front of the person, because in person you can also like psych people out. It wasn't Magic the Gathering.
Oh, that is another factor.
Before I started playing Magic the Gathering, I played the Yu-Gi-Oh card game at a local card shop. I was really good at that too back in the day. Like, that's the reason I stopped playing Magic, and I was like, hey, my friends play Yu-Gi-Oh, so I played Yu-Gi-Oh, and then we went to tournaments there. There was a 12 and under and a 13 and up bracket for the tournaments. I was winning all the 12 and unders, and then I went to the 13 and ups, and the two people, I was always like the third place, because the two people were like those very stereotypical no life people who live in basement, spending hundreds of dollars on children's card game and being real happy that they're being children.
Take that, you 13-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember one time I was in like the finals of one of those tournaments, and one of those two people who were always there, he named his kid after a Yu-Gi-Oh character. But I digress.
I love you,
that.
Blue Eyes White Dragon.
I think he named him Joey after Joey Wheeler, if I remember
I love you,
right.
Dark Magician Girl.
But anyhow, I remember just like something that I did there. I was like, oh, I'm going to lose this game. And I draw a card, and it's just like a random magic card. But I like give myself a little smirk, and I put this card face down.
I love it.
And he knows that I have the card Mirror Force in my deck because we play every week. So he's like, I'm going to put these 4 cards in defense position and attack you with this one. And I'm like, awesome. And that's not something that you can do you can't fake people out, because if I'm just like, oh, I played this face down, they're like, they don't see my, oh, I'm excited, I drew this card that's going to win me the game.
In fact, it's the opposite. On Magic the Gathering online, unless you go into your settings and make it super laborious for you to play the game, they can tell when you don't have actions, because it will automatically pass through all of your phases, so they know that you don't have answers to anything that you're going to do.
Yeah, so it takes away that mental part of the game. It makes it so much easier. It's so easy to accidentally break rules in paper Magic. One time I was at a tournament, I was shuffling my opponent's deck as a cut, and one of his cards fell. I put his deck down, didn't look down. I raised my hand, called a judge, said, hey, while I was cutting, I dropped one of his cards. And then the judge was like, hey, did you look at it? I was like, no. And he asked my opponent, and the opponent was like, no, he didn't look at it. He's like, okay, I'm giving you a game warning. Because even though I did everything right, I still got in trouble because I accidentally dropped a card.
Yeah.
So like that's something that can't happen.
That's another thing too. Is like we're going to move on to our next topic here after this, but when it comes to the online automatic like generation of everything, all the sequencing and stuff like that, I would be playing against these really high level players because I don't have the same technical tournament skill as them. Mm-hmm. They know when to like use the judge calling to their advantage to make you lose the game because you're not playing with proper etiquette, as opposed to playing the game and beating them. You know, I could be beating somebody and then they're just like, it's time to turn on the etiquette button, and we're gonna just call the judge and every little nuancey thing that I do incorrectly. You know what I'm saying?
I actually lost a game I was going to win because I drew a card at his end step instead of my draw step. Just literally, had I waited half a second, it would have transitioned steps in the game. But yep, I drew a card, and then he's like, all right, judge.
That's called being an asshole, though. Like,
yeah,
you can tell when somebody's doing something in good faith versus actually trying to cheat, and it's like, bro.
All these people, like, I get it. Like, there's money on the line. Mm-hmm. I'm mostly there for fun myself. Other people might be there, like, to make it their living. But, like, I'm there to have fun, and if I do well, I do well. But it's almost impossible to do exceptionally well because you also have to be that person.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to the next topic. I enjoyed talking about some Magic the Gathering there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brad. I don't play card games like that, and that was very insightful for me, so thanks. Okay, question numero tres, number 3. Are in-person gaming stores on the decline? Starting to feel that E&J yet?
Oh, yeah. It's good, though. Got that nice little warmth.
One of the better drinks.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. So, are in-person gaming stores on the decline? And my answer to that is, unfortunately, yes. One of the things that I wanted to do with my life is I wanted to open a gaming store, like a comic / board game / I wanted to run Magic tournaments. Like, I thought it would be great time. I see all these ones that are doing decently well. Even if you're not making a ton of money, you're making a living, and it would be doing something that everything involved in it, I think, would be fun. Magic the Gathering specifically, which would be is the biggest card game. There are other card games out there, like the Pokemon card game. It earns good revenue. Yu-Gi-Oh! Still exists somehow. I've tried playing that recently. The answer is if you they have a version of Magic Arena for Yu-Gi-Oh! Now. I was like, oh, I used to play that when I was a kid. I was like, I'll try it. I never took a turn. The game nowadays is pretty much decided by who goes first. And when I complained about it on Reddit, that was my mistake.
Yeah, don't
I'm
do that.
sorry. But I went onto the thing, and somebody had a post about it. It was like, hey, all you people who used to play who are coming now, don't give up on the game. I was like, I'm sorry, my idea of fun isn't sitting there for 5 minutes watching my opponent play solitaire and then being like, I somehow lost. But so yeah. And then there's this new one, Disney LAARPing or something like that. They're like really
you
pushing
serious?
it.
I actually have heard about that. I've heard about my buddy at work was telling me that there's a Disney card game coming out. He wanted me to try it.
I don't know much about it. I just know that it's being pushed heavily. Like,
yeah, you got the mouse back in it financially. So
If it's fun, I'll play it. Is it actually fun?
I don't know. I haven't tried it. I just know that like immediately the first set came out, and then they started hosting tournaments like that you could win cash
Really?
for, because that's how hard they're pushing it. It's Disney. They want they want their fingers in every pie they can.
Yep.
But yeah,
They probably know if they start young with these people, but the kids especially, they'll lock them in for life, and that's a huge market to lock them into for life.
So, but like I said, I wanted to start one. And I can't say for the other ones, but I know specifically for Magic the Gathering, their business decisions are killing small game stores, local game stores. They release these non-standard or they're sets that are special. Like recently they did a Warhammer 40k set. They've done secret layers in the past, which are like they release chase cards that are hard to come by, that are expensive, with alternate art, and then they charge insane amounts of money, and they also limit the production value of it, so to keep them chase and expensive. And then they don't ship them to stores. They put them on Amazon or their own personal store.
Wow.
And so people go, I can't get what I'm looking for from local stores, so they go and start buying direct from
TCG player, baby.
yeah, from those places. And then when local stores get it, they have to mark it up. They can't charge the same amount Amazon's charging because that's direct.
Yeah.
So they've done this repetitively. More and more often they're releasing these special sets because they make a good amount of money for them, because they're charging $300 for 6 pieces of cardboard because they know they can, because people, the whale market, will be out there buying it.
Save the dolphins.
Yeah, save the dolphins, man. I've never been more than a dolphin. I haven't even gotten into legacy or vintage or modern because it's like $600+ for a single deck, and everyone's like,
Jeez.
Standard's more expensive. I'm like, over the long run, yes, because in legacy I can spend $2,000 and have a deck, and it'll essentially never change my entire time I'm playing it. Or I can pay a, not anymore, but back in the day, I could pay $100 for a competitive standard deck, and it'll be good for 3 to 6 months. It's that same thing. It's you don't have a lot of money, so you're going to spend money over time, more money than you would have had you had the expendable currency. But yeah, so they do this over and over again, and with the release of Arena, less people play in person. My favorite game store actually stopped playing after COVID. COVID was the nail in the coffin for that type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, some stores still exist, but they aren't competitive. You play because it's fun, which is great. But for somebody like me who wants to be competitive in it, it isn't conducive for that. And any of the stores that were trying to foster the competitive crowd really just keeps losing more and more money. And then in addition to that, for Magic cards, you have to buy singles and give either store credit or cash back. And then say you buy something, you pay the market value of that is $100, so you give them 60%. That's fairly generous for what you can expect to be selling to a direct distributor like that. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to place it at $100. And then the next week, because Magic Arena is so constantly having people churn through it, the meta gets solved instantly. So all these chase cards that you had that were like $100, $50, whatever, when it came out, immediately dropped to $5, $1.30, because nobody's using them. Yeah. And you bought them on the pre-release before anyone was allowed to buy them. but we're allowed to play them in like events and stuff like that. You bought it for like 20, 30 times its now market value, and you can't charge for it. Nobody's gonna buy it, so you have to scale it back.
Yeah. And a chase card being what? A card that's like really advantageous competitively? You're anticipating that?
Yeah, so...
Gotcha.
It's a good thing that Dave doesn't know that much about card games. He's asking these questions that I'm innately know, because I played Magic the Gathering for God knows how long, and I played Hearthstone for half that time. But you are right about the meta getting solved quickly with online games. I know that for Hearthstone specifically, there are websites like Hearthstats and Vicious Syndicate where it tracks not only like the win rates of decks, but the win rates of each card in that deck and what cards are the potential outliers for what should be replaced for in that deck. It is a statistically driven game to where you're not even like playing the deck, you're just playing numbers.
Playing the meta.
It used to be before all these online tools and people playing like literally the clients going through thousands of games an hour. And there are websites that collect all that data and put it out there. Like you said, win rates of the deck, win rates against other decks, stuff like that. There's one for Limited, which I'm not going to name drop, partially because I can't remember the name. But it takes all the Limited data and says, these are the best colors to play. These are the worst colors to play. This is if you start your game with this card in your hand, this is the percentage likelihood that you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
And if you draw it later, this is the percentage. If you know,
I've seen those stats too.
Literally every single stat you can have imaginable exists out there. If you're trying to find it, you can. So the meta gets solved so quickly, which makes all those cards that seem good, but then don't do well against either certain things or something like that, just lose all their value. Like you said, you asked what a chase card was, and that would be like, to use a specific example, back when I was in college, they were doing World Wound. I don't know. Jace the Mind Sculptor they had just recently started printing a card type called Planeswalker, which was a new card type. And they printed this card, Jace the Mind Sculptor. It was 4 blue, it was 2 colorless, 2 blue mana, and had 4 abilities. And people were like, this card sucks. It can't do anything because Bloodbraid Elf, you play this and then it dies the next turn. You got to look at the top card of their deck, or you got to draw a card or something like that. That's all it does. That's bad, whatever. Then in Standard, Bloodbraid Elf rotated out of what you were allowed to play, and Jace the Mind Sculptor went from a $5 card to $120 for the base non-foil version. Everybody wanted it, and they were paying insane amounts of money for it. It would be, if you were drafting and you opened it, you would take it no matter what, because it was better than anything, it was worth more than the prizes you would win if you took a good card for your deck.
That's a good way to put it. It's worth more than what you could even win.
Yeah.
It's like, it is the win itself.
Yeah.
You know?
So I remember playing at it. We sat down for it and we're like, all right, guys, doesn't matter if you're playing it or not. When you get Jace the Mind Sculptor, you just like slam your hand on the deck so we know what happened. Like that was our rule at our local card shop.
I at my local game store, I won't name the place specifically because he's a good dude. But
yeah, that's why I'm not doing it either.
But we went to a new place to play Magic for their release. I think it was Zendikar. I think that's what Jace was in that set.
It was the second Zendikar set. I think it was World Wound. It was Zendikar, World Wound, whatever.
Either way, it's besides the point. We went there. It's the first time that we were there, and I went there with like 4 other friends. And at some point during the night, that Jace the Mind Sculptor got swiped out. It was like a foil one. They got swiped out of the storage unit. It's like display shelf. And because we were new there, we were suspects, so to speak, and we got banned.
Yeah,
our entire group got banned.
What?
And I was
with
like,
no evidence?
Yeah, no, it was just like we were new there, so like it couldn't be somebody.
It doesn't mean anything.
I know, but like
you wouldn't even know the patterns or whenever it's gonna be left alone or anything like that.
So like, especially if I'm a new player, I might not even recognize the worth of the. I personally, I didn't give a fuck about Jace the Mind Sculptor. I was trying to hit people down with some creatures. But I messaged him back on Facebook. He wanted me to kind of rat out my other friends and whether or not they did it, and I said I don't know who took it. It wasn't me, and he let me back into the store, thankfully.
Would this store name ring a bell for me?
Yes, it
Okay.
certainly would.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I heard about it from the owner then.
Yeah.
But you heard about that event
Yeah,
from the
he
owner?
didn't tell me the group. I heard a group of people had gotten accused of stealing stuff, and it was around that same time.
Hilarious.
Because he knew me by name.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was the one who had a Jason the Mind Sculptor stolen from me at one point. I was at a place, one of the first times I went, and I brought you go to these games and you bring your trade binder, because that's what you do. You're trying to trade cards that you're not using, but other people might want. And so I brought my trade binder, and this guy, the owner of the store, had this really weird policy. You cannot have any of your cards that aren't in your deck at your area while you're here. You have to put it in this pile where everyone keeps all of their cards.
Yeah, that's totally
behind
safe.
the thing.
That's stupid as heck.
I argued about it, and he's like, if you don't like it, don't play. And I was like, this is the only place
Well, if
I
it
have
gets
to play
stolen,
right now.
you just sue them for whatever.
So somebody earlier in the night asked me to trade my Jason the Mind Sculptor. I was like, no, I only have 2. You can play up to 4 on the deck. I didn't want to get rid of it. I was like, whatever. And he was the only person who knew that I had it because I was new there, and he was the only person who tried to trade with me earlier in the day. I had put it over there. I was playing a match. I went back because the person who I had played asked if we wanted to trade. I was like, yeah, sure. So we both got our stuff and we're going through, and my Jace was gone. And I'm like, the only person it could have been who knew what my binder looked like and that I had it in there was this guy. But I went up to the owner. I was like, hey, somebody stole a card under your watch. And he's like, oh, it's you left it there. It's your problem. I'm like, I didn't want to leave it there. It was your rule. I didn't want to do that. He's like, well, it can't be helped. I was like, well, I know who it was, because first of all, he's showing off his Jason the Mind Sculptor that he didn't have earlier in the night to his friends, and he's the only person who saw it. He's like, you can't prove it. So I never went back there. But
Yeah, no kidding.
it was absolutely bullshit.
You should have went over there and punched him right in his stupid face.
I really should have, but at the time, that would have gotten me a lot of trouble because I was also in the military.
Yeah.
If I wasn't in the military or any position that I really cared about, he would have gotten punched in the face, for sure.
Yeah.
And then I would have took Jace the Mind Sculptor and showed it off. Like, I just got my Jace the Mind Sculptor back.
But yeah, at the time, I think Jace was going for $150 because it was used in all the Eternal formats, which is Legacy, Vintage, all these ones that don't rotate, non-rotating
Gotcha.
is called Eternal formats. So because it was used in pretty much every format, it just kept accruing money.
It was used in every format, even though it had a really bad weakness to that one Blood Elf card or whatever it was.
It was
Blood Braid, yeah.
Yeah, Blood Braid. Yeah, so that was when the card came out and was legal. It was the end of Jund, which was a certain color combination that played that card. And the reason it was bad against it is when it came onto the battlefield, it got another card from the top of your deck with a mechanic called Cascade. You could play it for free. And then it also had haste, which means it could attack the turn it came in. So when you had a Planeswalker out, it was in. You're like, okay, they don't have anything on the table. I don't need anything to defend it. I play this, I do this thing, and they're like, okay, I play this, get another spell, attack it, it's dead. So that's why it was bad, specifically against that one card.
Yeah, the way I'd explain it is that in card games, you typically want to 2-for-1 your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
want to always have your cards killing 2 of their things for every one of your cards. And eventually, mathematically, you're going to win if you do that.
Yeah.
So the way Blood
Blood
Braid
Braid
Elf
Elf
worked,
is a 2-for-1
it was
card.
a 3-for-1 because you played the card, got a new card, and removed their card all in one fell swoop. And that's why everybody thought
crazy.
it was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then Blood Braid Elf went away, and there was nothing like that. And then they're like, oh, this card that just sits here accruing value every turn is actually insane.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, ready for the next topic, Dave?
All right. Let's see here.
I was
Get
just
your
getting
shots
thirsty.
queued up there, gentlemen.
Wasn't expect to hear that from you, Brad.
All right. Question of number 4 for the night is: are video games a replacement for LARPing? And for those at home, LARPing being live action roleplay.
Yeah, explain what LARPing physically is. People might not even know at this point. It's pretty, I guess it's an older, type of recreation, I guess.
Yeah, there is actually a movie about it, which was pretty good. I can't remember the movie.
I don't remember
role
anything.
player or something. It was,
You know what I'm talking about?
yeah, called role players, I think.
It
that super bad kid.
Yeah,
was
that's
in
what I was
there,
going to say.
too.
The kid from Superbad who had the
Knights of
fake ID.
Badassdom?
Probably not that.
No, the kid who had the fake ID. What was it?
McLovin.
McLovin.
Yeah.
McLovin was in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so live action role playing is like your D&D, but you're physically acting everything out. You are the character. You're not just rolling dice. There are different types of role playing. There's the more physical kind where you get where you can make armor and wear costumes, and then you have weapons called boffers, which are usually made of PVC pipe lined with like styrofoam and then shaped into like a sword or an axe or something like that. And then there's ones called Mind's Eye Theater, which usually people would dress up, but more like cosplaying rather than like really going at it. And then you would play rock, paper, scissors to decide outcomes. And then the one that I did, which was Mind's Eye Theater, was with Werewolf, which is a World of Darkness setting, which is also on tabletop. But they have a LARP, which is cross country. You can take your character from your local one, travel 3 states over, and play there.
I didn't know that. I thought all LARPs were like kind of just like centralized to just that it was each individual event like a card shop would be.
A lot of them are, but there are groups that go across the country. One of them that is the other version, DR, Dystopia Rising, is a post-apocalyptic game which has been getting into a lot of trouble. I'm not going to even bring up the controversy. It's still ongoing, so I don't want to talk about it. I played that one for a little while, but you had you used like Nerf guns or you used boffer weapons, and you
Allegedly. He allegedly uses all these things.
Well, when I played it, I was playing an American badass. It's not badass, it's a badass. Yeah. And they were the stereotypical hick. They're all about wearing hats. Like, hats are their thing. So I had a straw cowboy hat, and I took a Budweiser can, and I put like, I like took it apart and like bolted it into my hat and stuff like that. And then I took around a big axe, and on my hat it said "like a rock," and I didn't know my name, so I said, "Everybody calls me Buddy Rock because I'm like a rock." And it was just a lot of fun to just walk around as a hick who like blew shit up. There was for an American badass there. They had their own holiday, which was Splosions Day, which was the 4th of July. But the idea of it was we would all sit down, go to the brewery, get as much alcohol as we could, and then just light up explosives. So it was a fun game, but
I want it
there's
to
a
be an
lot of
actual holiday.
Yes, Splosions Day.
Wait, that is a holiday. 4th of July.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's the post-apocalyptic 4th of July. But
I'm cringing out of my body.
Then I played another one, which was, like I said, Werewolf, where you get your experience points for showing up and you get items for doing stuff, just like in a tabletop game. But with Mind's Eye Theater, whereas opposed to regular LARP with boffer weapons, you're hitting people with your weapons and calling out damage.
Yeah, so let me explain that, because that may be a foreign concept for people, because you're like, you know it, but like people might not know it.
Sure.
So in these LARPs, when you hit people, it's not like a Renaissance fair, right, where you go and you have like a bamboo stick or whatever. I forget what it's exactly called.
Yeah.
But like you hit them until they just basically give up.
Or something like that.
Yeah. In LARPs, you hit them with your stick that's like has foam on the end, and you call out what number damage you do, and it's kind of like a trust system of how much health each person has. And Dave's got some video of lightning
classic LARP
put
video.
In my earbuds,
it's more fun than this. It's just this is
let's
watching it is terrible.
Yeah.
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
This is it. This is it. This is it.
Lightning bolt.
Pause it real quick. That guy is out of cast for the day. I'm not kidding you. You have to keep track of like how much mana you have for the day, and then you have to. I think you have to spend money to replenish it or something. I can't remember.
In-game currencies. In-game money.
Okay. I was like, whoa, these guys are on to something.
Top me off, bud.
No, I used to play in a game that doesn't exist anymore. I played it back when I was in college. Like I said, my nerd frat was into everything. it was called Quest, and it was a fantasy setting. So the first time I went, I was like, I'm just going to NPC because it's cheaper. You pay to help fund like the campsite and stuff that you're playing at. So I went out as like this wolf monster that was immune to fire or whatever. And so I was out there in a pack of people, and we went towards the tavern, which was like the safe zone. If you're in the tavern, you can't be attacked. So people would come out because they're like, oh, monsters. They're going to have coins and stuff. We had silver, gold, and then like magical essences you could get for enchanting weapons and stuff like that. So this guy who was a caster, and he was a bigger guy. He played caster because he didn't want to chase people. Instead, he had... yeah, he played specifically a spellcaster because he didn't want to run. You're playing this thing where you're running around and hitting people with weapons, and he was like, no, I'm just going to take this cloth filled with birdseed, which was called spackets. And the way you cast spells in that game is you call, I call upon the power of whatever that I'm doing, and I cast this spell, and you use whatever level. Most people had, like, those umpire clickers to maintain and their health or their spell points or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's easier. But he saw me and he's like, I call upon the power of fire to cast Firebolt, 6 fire, and hits me. And I'm like, immune. And he gets this look on his face and he goes, I call upon the power of fire to cast Firebolt, 6 fire. I'm like, immune. And he just keeps doing it because he forgot every other spell in his character sheet. And it was hysterical because he had no idea what to do and he wasn't going to run because that's not why he's there. So he's like slowly walking towards the tavern, just throwing something that I'm immune to. And meanwhile, I'm going, 12 fire, 12 fire, 12 fire. and then he was like, you burned through my armor. I call upon the power of fire to cast fire. He's like, fire column, 100 fire. And because that's like their maximum, most powerful thing you can do. And I'm like, immune. And he's like, what do I do? It's like, cast anything other than fire.
That's anything other than fire.
That's
Dude,
so
the
funny.
mental image I have is just like big stocky guy. It's just fantastic.
And he just has this panic look on his face because he's
Oh my
like, you're
gosh,
immune
dude.
to fire. But he has other spells. He can cast lightning spells and all this. He just forgot.
Yeah.
He panicked so bad that he forgot he could do anything else. It was hysterical.
I mean, that is the truth, though, because that's one thing I did like about LARPs. Is I played at a few LARPs at the Quest thing when I was younger, and I used my young athleticism to my advantage.
Yeah.
I will say.
Yeah, there were a lot of like 40-plus-year-old guys who didn't want to run around.
If I could just move fast enough, they just couldn't deal damage to me.
It's actually insane.
A bike is OP, is what you're saying.
Well, you couldn't do something like that. And then conversely, like I said, there's ones called Mind's Eye Theater, where you're playing a role and you have traits. For werewolf, you have physical traits, social traits, mental traits. And my character was a Silent Strider Arun, and what that means for, I assume, most people, an Arun is the auspice of the moon you were born under, because you're a werewolf, that matters. An Arun is, I was born under the full moon, so I am a warrior class. There was also, going down the line, there was a Galliard, was born under the gibbous moon, which is 3/4 moon, and they're the storytellers. Their main job is they have buffs and debuffs, and they tell stories and stuff like that. When you're not combat, they are the keeper of stories because the way you progress in the werewolf hierarchy is through renown. Like, you do things, stories get told about you, you get more powerful. So there were Galliards, and that was their main focus. At the half moon, you would be a Philodox, which is the judge. If you break the rules, they're the ones who are coming and doing stuff. They have a lot of self buffs and like stuff like that, and they do kind of weird things considering going
How's that
down
different
one.
from a warrior?
So, as an Arun, my primary thing is rage. You start with maximum amount of rage as an Arun, and what rage does is it's a scaling thing that lets you take extra turns because it's a turn-based. The werewolf, the Mind's Eye Theater, is a turn-based when you get into combat, and it scales depending on what you're planning on doing, like the number of traits you have. So if I have 14 physical traits, and then I'm also attacking with a sword, and I have 5, because 5 is the max of a single skill you can do. I have 5 in sword play. then I would be going at initiative 19. But if you're in a rune, you can also get a gift, which you get from spirits, because werewolves are very close to the spirits in the world. Essentially, they're bioterrorists in this thing. They're bioterrorists. They're fighting for the health of Gaia.
What I did want to bring up is I know that we're kind of running low on the time here, and I wanted to touch back on to the core of the question back earlier, comparing role-playing games to video games, in the sense that, are video games just going to be a replacement for these role-playing games, you think?
I had forgotten that was the main question.
No, it's fine. I think it's important. I wanted to let you kind of just give people understanding of what LARPs are and like why it means something to you, like why you can get invested in something like that. Because people may never play a LARP in their life. They may have one near them, you know?
So before I answer that question, what I was trying to get to was the difference between Boffer LARP and Mind's Eye Theater LARP is that Boffer LARP is much more athletic, usually. You're running around, you're hitting people. In Mind's Eye Theater, you're deciding everything with rock, paper, scissors. And then if you tie, you win if you have more traits in one thing than the other person. There's retests and stuff like that, depending on gifts and stuff, but whatever. That's the difference. Is one is more character driven, which is Mind's Eye Theater, which I actually prefer. I like the storytelling purposes of it. And the other is more like running around and getting your aggression out because you're hitting somebody. So as a difference between video games and LARP, I don't think it'll ever be a replacement, because when you're playing LARP, you are the character. Like, the closest you can get in a video game is an RPG where you're playing 40, 60, 100 hours as one character, making decisions, slowly progressing, but you're still playing that character. When you're playing LARP, your entire person is who you're playing.
I would disagree a bit with that. I think that as we move further into the future with technology, we're going to be using more VR-based outlets for representations of ourselves, where our avatar is projected online as ourselves, right? And then when it comes to like casting spells like lightning bolt, right? Like you're physically calling out things and keeping track of numbers in your head, probably cheating. You can't cheat if you're online, right?
Yeah, you can't cheat. Like that is the problem with LARP. It's an honor system, but with video games, the way they are now, I don't think they could ever be a replacement. If we get to the point of like Sword Art Online, where you're full body VR playing somebody, yes, I think that would be able to do it, especially for people, like I said, that big guy who didn't want to run.
He can run.
You can run. You don't have that physical limitations. If you have a physical disability or whatever, you can still wholly engross yourself in that character, which is what Mind's Eye Theater does better than Boffer LARPs, is that you can be in a wheelchair but still play a character who is sprinting around the battlefield doing things. But as a form of escapism, which a lot of people, I would say, play LARP for, I don't think there's anything currently that could replace what that does for you. Whether you want to be in the more physical or want to be in the more storytelling version of it, it doesn't really matter. They both have things that you would like, assuming that you're into that type of nerdy thing. Right. The way video games are now, I still enjoy them. I enjoy multiple genres. I don't enjoy rhythm games, but whatever. I've got no rhythm. I don't know if you've seen the color of my skin. I have no rhythm. But like, yeah, like LARPs are really good at becoming somebody else, which I know a lot of people don't like who they are, which is fine. Whether you can work on that or not. Like, some things you can work on, some things you can't. Disabilities you can't get over, depending on what they are. Like, oh, I have an amputated leg. There's no way that wanting to change that does anything. In a LARP, like I said, you can be in a wheelchair and you can be doing this badass thing because you're somebody else. And that, I don't think video games in their current capacity could ever do the same thing.
You have any other questions about LARPing days specifically?
Yeah.
Like, this is his first time. I'd expect even like having a full in-depth conversation about LARP.
No, I mean, I think I'm familiar with LARPing, never seen it in person. I think as somebody on the outside, I still don't, to try to help you gather your point, I still don't see how there's elements of LARPing that can't be expressed through books, expressed through tabletop RPG? Because you say it'll never be a replacement. Well, it's like, well, we do have VR now. We do have, like, it depends on what you're going for, I guess,
Right.
what you get from it.
Like I said, the current limitations of our technology can't do the same thing. You can completely invest yourself into being a character when you're LARPing.
I see.
A book, if the main character is written as a blank slate, you can put yourself in its place, but you're still not making decisions.
Yeah.
In a video game, you might be making decisions, but you might not be able to connect with the character because they're whatever, completely different from you, making choices that are in the video game you have to make, like
I see.
that you wouldn't make in real life. LARPs, the story is what is happening in the thing. D&D is fairly close, but it's more random also than LARP would be. And there's still a storyline there that most DMs are trying to get you to go down. With LARP, there might be an overarching story, but in all the ones I had, there's side stories going on. Some of them specifically tailored to you. Like I said, I was a silent strider, and their whole thing is they hate vampires more than the average werewolf. I had stories going for me where I went to nearby Egypt. In the lore, you can't get into Egypt anymore as a werewolf, but near Egypt, and raided a vampire coven, essentially, and got a spirit guardian that was a cobra because of the area that made me better against vampires. And I found an ancient artifact from my people that made me better against vampires because it was tailored to me. That's something that LARP is really good at doing, in addition to, even if you don't want to do anything in a lot of LARPs, people will just sit in the taverns as their characters, play cards, or do other things. You're living that character.
Yeah, that is the interesting thing, too. I remember specifically at Quest, there was this thing called the Defeaticus. Mm-hmm. And me and Dom, we were going for it. I can't remember exactly what this thing was comprised of, but it was like the pizza around patties. There was like 2 like hamburger patties with bacon and cheese, and like it was all between like 2. The pizza patties were like the bread for this thing, and if you ate it all, you didn't have to pay for it.
That's another thing. In LARP, everything is player driven. It's like an MMO, but in real life and more immersive. At Quest, there was the Spartacue, which I think is where that came from, where a character went to the tavern and he bought with real money a bunch of food, and then he would make these insane combinations, and you would pay with in-game currency to get these things. You could drug other people. Like one of the times one of our friends was annoying us. Hold on. So he was a spellcaster, and everything you do as a spellcaster is verbal components. You have to say your spell. So he went up to the bathroom, and we poured a potion in his drink and taped something at the bottom. He finished his drink, and we're like, hey, look at the bottom. And said, this was spiked with the silence spell. So he couldn't talk anymore until he found somebody who would...
That's fun. I mean, like, last thing I'll say on this, and we're going to move on to the next topic, is I remember that you do have to like camp out there, right? Yeah. Like you're physically, you like, I try to put it in perspective, people. You're out there, like I think for Quest, we stayed in like a Boy Scout, like dormitory thing.
It was a Boy Scout campground.
Yeah, you're out there, and then like you don't have to have a character if you wanted to get into this. If you're not familiar with the world of LARP, whatever else, you can play as an NPC.
Yeah.
And I remember some of my favorite memories were as an NPC, because then I could be this really powerful character that would take me fucking 10 years to get to in game, you know?
Yeah,
like,
that's another thing that the video games won't do, is that you can play the NPCs. In fact, people need to play the NPCs. At Quest, they had rotations where they had 3 different groups. 2 of them would be PCing at once, and the third group would be NPCing, because if you don't have NPCs, you don't have anything.
You need an orange cart guy.
Yeah. Playing an NPC is a very different experience. You can do any kind of power scaling anywhere on there. You don't worry about your character death, because if you lose a LARP character, it is devastating. You think losing a D&D character is bad? This is somebody who, if you play them long enough, they are a part of you. Like...
Yeah, that's what I really was missing from the discussion earlier about the D&D stuff, like having that attachment to your character, because like I think that attachment makes it a much better experience if you actually care what happens to your character. It's not, it's like, oh, the DM's gonna like baby you and kind of make it, oh, it's okay. It's like, you got death saving throws. You're gonna get out of this.
It's actually really interesting when you're LARPing, and you can tell sometimes the PCs are just trying to kill you, which you're not going to get when you're playing D&D or even a video game. Like, video games are meant to be balanced. Like this, we were going out in a LARP. I was NPCing, and I was a cow. And hold on, no, this is amazing. We were supposed to be specifically, our group was supposed to be a role-playing thing, but the PCs wanted to kill us. So the guy who was running it, who was a kobold, he was a Spanish kobold trying to teach people how to make cheese. That was the encounter we were walking away by.
Okay.
So, okay. You can get so crazy with this. I was the cow that they were supposed to milk to get the cheese. I had a little bell, and I was wearing a tunic that was like black and white spotted. But they're like, okay, they're talking amongst themselves, and the guy who's playing the kobold heard them talking about trying to kill us to get loot. He's like, hold on, I didn't give these guys stats. I gotta do that. He's giving stats, and he talks pretty loudly. He comes over to me, he's like, all right, you're a cow. You have one thing you can do. It's mad cow disease. You ring your bell, and anyone who can hear it takes 100 disease damage. He's like, but you don't do it unless you're attacked first. And everybody around who was planning on attacking is like, no, we'll learn how to make cheese. That's fine.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you convinced me you can't do that in a video game.
Yeah,
Like even Baldur's Gate 3, I'm launching a new campaign for this. We just started it. Like,
are
it's
you
really
playing multiplayer?
Yes,
Okay.
6 people. We did a mod for 6 people.
Cool.
And you know, me not having a ton of D&D roleplay experience, it's really fun because I'm like, hey, you know, you're the wizard, you do this encounter, right? But like you said, it's still pick option 1 through 5, and you can't be like, oh, well now the cow does disease damage. Don't touch him.
That like I said, at our current capacity of video games, I don't think it can match what LARP can do because it's so anything could happen.
I see. Okay, way to sum that up. Thank you.
Great.
All right, boys, let's go ahead and queue up our next shot here.
Also, this is the first podcast I don't know if I mentioned. This is the first podcast we're using these bullet caps. Yeah, I just had these 3D printed and designed by my buddy John. He will hopefully be on maybe the next podcast.
They didn't come with us.
Huh?
They didn't come with it.
No, this is all custom made,
Yeah,
baby.
dude, he did all this.
I knew about this. I didn't know this didn't come with it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
why?
John's so good, dude.
Well, yeah, no.
He's a killer.
When you were talking to me about it, you're like, "What do you think?" I brought up my concern was that they might spill when you spun them. So I thought that the caps were just like a thing that came with them to stop that from happening. How did whoever made this not think of the fact that it might spill if you're like, "Woo, I'm drunk, let's spin this."
Well, they probably didn't expect you to spin it because this is actually a unique creation. This dolly, this Lazy Susan thing, I attached to this thing.
Oh, really?
This is just supposed to sit on top of a bottle, and then you're supposed to just put shots around the bottle.
Oh, wow, that's way less cool than what you've got. I thought they sold it like this.
Yeah.
No, the way you did it is way better than the way they expect you to do it. Yeah, I like
this
it.
is legitimately,
Top
if
tier.
I was in marketing or something, if I was like a legitimate businessman, I would make something
I feel
this.
like their design is a fail because it isn't like this initial.
One of the viewers watching this is about to steal this product.
They might, but like it's a Shot Takes original already.
Yeah.
Yeah, trademarked.
Trademarked. It's a Shot
Patent
Takes original.
pending. Try us.
I put my seal of approval on it.
You ain't gonna sell shit if you ain't got a brand, baby.
Slogan.
Oh, sorry. Think responsibly, viewers.
Apparently, my slogan for the day is "Count the wrinkles."
Don't ask about the context. I implore you.
Please.
It's all for Dave. He was counting them earlier. Let me tell you.
Moving
me take
on.
this, hold on.
Blocking my trauma. All right, question number 5. If you could only play one video game for the rest of your life, what would it be?
That is a very, very difficult question for me because that depends on what hyperfixation I'm on at the time.
Yeah.
I have
Same.
ADHD, diagnosed as an adult, so, you know. But then, yeah, I get really stuck on one video game at a time, and then I lose all interest in it, so it would be really bad. I think that the game that I play the most, if I don't include Magic the Gathering Arena, because I also play it in person, and I started playing it as a card game, so I don't know if that counts. I think the game I play the most is Dungeons and Dragons Online.
BDO.
DDO. It is a 16-year-old MMO.
Good Lord.
Yeah, they're celebrating their 16th anniversary this year. It's actually really cool because it's also the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons in general.
Wow.
So due to that matching up, they're doing a year-long anniversary event. They released a archetype class for the fighter, which is the Dragon Lord fighter this month, because this is the first month of it. But they're doing something every month this year, up until their 17th anniversary, a new thing every month, which is really neat. Dungeons and Dragons Online is a very unique MMO. Everything you do is instance-based. You're in a dungeon. Every single mission you have is in a dungeon, in an instance of 1 to 6 people. If you're on a raid, it's up to 12. The combat is kind of action-focused. Unlike something like World of Warcraft, which I have played, it's a decent game, but I didn't really stick with me.
That's fascinating that you were this invested in the DDO, but you haven't played any World of Warcraft. Because for me, World of Warcraft would be the game I would choose, right?
So my problem with World of Warcraft is when it first came out, I didn't know anybody who played it. I played it solo, didn't really care for it. By the time I played with friends, it was Mists of Pandaria.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Gross.
Yeah.
No wonder it didn't stay.
I have no real connection with World of Warcraft. It's a decent game.
I was looking to see if it was on my map. I might have to like draw a
this is
giant marker
somebody
over it.
This is coming from somebody who I adored Blizzard before Activision. Yeah, Activision acquired them. Blizzard, every single game they put out, I was in love with. StarCraft, Warcraft, I
Diablo,
liked Diablo.
as you mentioned.
Yes, Diablo, great. The Lost Vikings was a fun game.
That's a throwback.
Yeah, I know, right?
Get out.
It was a fun game, all right? I'm not saying I played it a lot, but it was fun. Okay. But like, I was obsessed. I still play StarCraft all the time. Diablo, I haven't played 4. That seems like a dumpster fire. Diablo 1 was my introduction to Blizzard. Warcraft, amazing games all the way through 3. World of Warcraft, it's a great game. I'm not saying it's not. But my personal experience with it, not having people to play with, playing it solo, that's not.
I totally agree with you, man. I mean, I think back to all of my fondest memories, and I want to say like 85, 90%, if not more, have been because I've been with my friends. We're doing stuff that doesn't even have any relation to the storyline or the meta quest or dungeon
progression.
Yeah, it's just like us and just like the Gurubashi Arena filming WWE entrances is like being complete fucking goons. Like,
yeah, I think that if I had played it in its prime, vanilla, Frozen Throne, all that.
Yeah,
I think if I had people that I could have played with consistently, I would have enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure, nearly 100%, but I didn't. And at this point, it is the MMO that most MMOs are based off of.
Yes.
So if you play an MMO, you're kind of getting the gist of that. DDO, Dungeons and Dragons Online, is fairly different. Unlike WoW, where your basic attack is just you're waiting for your rotation, depending on the class you play, your basic attack does more than anything else you do. Like, DDO is Dungeons and Dragons Online, based after 3.5. They have they have fighter, rogue, ranger. They have a ton of classes.
I want to add something in.
Yeah.
And I remember that I went to an emergency response thing, and somebody was in a crash, and they had D&D books in the back, and they were picking it off. They were trying to get it from the vehicle or whatever else. Like they were trying to protect it. Like, oh, he's a fellow nerd. Is like, oh, you play Dungeons and Dragons? He's like, yeah. It's like, what do you play? And he said something. Is like, oh, the last thing I played was 3.5. And he's like, oh, that's what my father plays. I'm like,
wow. Oh my god. You instantly sprouted 4 more gray hairs.
Yeah, I know, right?
I felt like Han Solo being frozen in time.
God, we're not that old, right? Anyhow, I mean, if you want to hear it, the first D&D I played was 2nd edition, so 3.5 was out at the time. It's just the person I played with knew 2nd edition, but still.
before you get back to your point, one thing I want to throw out there too, when you said it's the 50-year anniversary, that means
D&D?
there's like 60-year-olds who there are people out there who are 60 years old, love D&D, played it all the way through their life. I wonder what those people are like. Comment below if you're one of them.
I love that.
like, subscribe.
Seriously. Yeah.
I looked over there. This is the camera I should look at. Like and subscribe, guys. The first time I played D&D was with a friend of mine's father. He played, and that's why I played 2nd edition. My first character was a dwarven ninja. All right,
Hard to see.
Yeah, no, it was great. He loved my character concept. He was like, all right, you have this scimitar. He was like, you can cut holes in the air and then appear somewhere else. I was like, that's sweet. He didn't tell me that it was cursed item. That every time I did it, he'd roll a dice and it eventually transported us to Ravenloft. But so the first encounter, I did it like 30 times.
What's Ravenloft?
Oh, so Ravenloft is, do you know Strahd? The vampire lord Strahd, who's a D&D character based after Dracula.
Okay, I know him now.
It is his realm. It is the gothic horror realm of D&D.
Oh, everything is so cringe. Yeah. Is there a hot topic?
Where do you think we appeared? No. No. So the first encounter we come across, I don't even remember what it was, but I was like, hell yeah! I just joined the group, and I was like, I use my sword. I appear behind this guy. Sneak attack. I get out of there. I did it like 30 times. He's sitting there going, okay. He didn't expect it to happen in one encounter. But then he's like, all right, you guys noticed some weird stuff. There's a lot of undead and people are like really just like gothic and like emo and bullshit like that. So we realized that we transported to Ravenloft, where the ruler of the realm is essentially Dracula. He's an insanely powerful vampire, and like undead are all over the place. Anything gothic horror you can think of. So we find this little girl, I think, and she's like, come to my cave, it's protected from the undead. One of our party members, while he's there, he's a necromancer. He sees a snake, he kills it and summons it as undead, breaking our only place in the entire realm where we could rest without attack. We were so mad. Nobody was mad at me after that point for transporting us there, but they were all mad at him.
For the snake, yeah.
I think moments like that make it, though. And I think that's what really makes like the video game aspect too, of like what you would really enjoy playing is like, I think making those memories that aren't prescribed by the video game experience are the ones most worth seeking out.
Yeah.
And I feel like so often these video games now, they like force you into this railroaded experience of like, this is what the game is capable of. You have zero interpretation of what it can do.
Right.
I mean, and not to really go back to the earlier point, but that's why I said that video games can't do what LARP does, because LARP, or even to a lesser extent, tabletop, can cater to what you want or what you're doing. It can shift gears. But to plug the game that I play the most, it is a 16-year-old game. It's free to play, but also has a subscription service. If you want to try it out, I recommend playing free to play for a little bit. If you like the game, pay the it's like $15 a month. I pay it's $30 every 3 months, or $100 for a year for the VIP.
$100 every year seems like fine if you're playing the game. But like my question is like, what's the difference between DDO and like Baldur's Gate or Divinity Original Sin?
Okay, so it's an MMO, first of all.
Yeah, but these other games, they look just like so much cleaner and crisper, and like they look like the mechanics are solid. Like, what makes it worth paying $100 a year?
Okay, so DDO, even though it's a 16-year-old game, it is very unique for what an MMO is. Most of the people who play DDO are in their 30s or older. You have essentially next to no toxic gamers. Only multiplayer game I've ever played where I've never had a problem with anybody being toxic. You can go in and be like, I'm new to this game. I don't know this quest. People who have played the quests multiple times will just sprint through it. They're like, can you help me out? They will slow down and teach you as you're playing.
No, it's not.
So like the community is great. Like there's only like 5,000 players in the entire game. at this point. Because
Wow, and you run off a subscription model of 5,000 players. How's that even economically feasible?
I know.
So the way the free to play experience works is every mission is an instance. Like I said, you go into the dungeon and then there are different difficulty settings. There's normal, hard, epic, and then Reaper. You can, if you're free to play, the first time you go into a thing, you can only play it on normal. If you're VIP, you can play it on anything. Some of the quests are locked behind purchases, but you earn, if you're free to play, you earn favor as you play for different factions with every quest that you do. And that the favor you earn will give you premium currency to spend in the store. Things that you can spend in the store are you can unlock all of the quests that aren't free to play, except for the newest couple of expansions. But all the old expansions you can earn for free just by playing. There's stuff there are character classes and stuff that are locked. They're not the most powerful ones. They're just different. But you can pay for them by playing for free. I pay for the game because I play it so much, and it gives you everything except for expansions in the VIP thing. But the combat is more action focused, and you have skills and stuff. Like monks are very interesting because you have combos. You say you hit with a fire attack and then a water attack and then an earth attack, and then you get a finisher move because you played those 3 in a row that you can hit and do a special attack that's different had you hit fire, 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 or earth, wind, whatever. They have so many, they play combos and stuff like that. It is a more action focused. It has platforming, which is unique to most MMOs that I played.
I will say I played the Star Wars Online MMO.
Yes, that's my second favorite MMO.
Boy, was that game had so many good elements
It's the
of it.
story that really gets you.
There are so many little gripes here and there, and I will say that on the platforming aspect of it, they had these things like artifacts that you have to get that would permanently increase your power or something like that. And you have to do these platforming puzzles, and I loved figuring those things out.
Yeah.
It's not like
Same.
In DDO, not only is there platforming, but there's actual traps, and only like rogues and artificers can find the way to disarm the trap and disarm it.
I like that.
So that's another unique thing.
Actual class flavor. I like that.
Yeah.
I missed that. Like World of Warcraft kind of missed the mark with that because originally, like the warlocks, they just had this big spell book of just nonsense they could just like do. Like just all these random spells that had nothing to do with combat that they just do.
Yeah.
And I love that aspect of it. And like especially like growing up with the game, like my mind would race with like abilities that could still exist in the game, like learning a book that could let you hear every language or whatever else in the game. Doesn't exist. Still would be really cool if they implemented that.
So on the next thing that makes DDO unique is that like I said, it's based after the 3.5. It's a difficult game to play if you don't know the D&D rule set. The character creation and everything there are so many ways. It's just like tabletop. You can build your character an infinite number of ways. Not only it goes from level 1 to 32. From 1 to 20, you play your normal thing and you get your class levels. From 20 to 30, you get epic levels. And then 30 to 32, which is the newest thing, is they have legendary levels. You get stuff per level, but you also have 5 tiers per level where you get points, where you have enhancement trees. And you put these in, and each class has 3 different enhancement trees that you can put points into that change the way you play. So if I'm playing one bard and say I'm playing something called a warcaster, it's all about ice attacks and buffing your allies. But you're playing a bard and playing a swashbuckler, and it's all about one-handed fighting and like doing all these cool things like that.
That is interesting. I remember World of Warcraft myself, because I haven't played DDL, so I'm trying to relate it to what I know is World of Warcraft. I would tank, and I would go in these dungeons. I'm playing a warrior. Warriors suck ass at certain points at tanking, and at pulling AoE aggro.
Yeah.
And I would spec into like Bladestorm, a Bladestorm, and pull these people, and like be able to like actually like AoE pull people. and I would get frowned upon because I wasn't just doing, you know, this XYZ build of
Yeah.
like, this is how you
Yeah.
play tank. You're supposed to use cleave, you're supposed to use these, like your shouts, whatever else. How does DDO enable all these classes, or is it a thing that's just meant to be fun, or is there meta builds in the game?
So in DDO, there are, I don't want to say infinite because that's not true, but there are literally dozens, maybe hundreds of different builds you can play, and they're all viable. If you want to play the hardest difficulty end game, yeah, there's only going to be a few different types of things that can work.
So that does exist. So
Yes,
yeah.
but most people don't play the end game because the third thing, and I think the most important thing that makes DDO different, is the reincarnation system. The way it works is you take, say you play a fighter, you get to level 20. At level 20, you can keep going into epics. Or you can get a heart of wood, go to this guy and be like, I want to start back at level 1, choose my race and class combination all over again, and get a bonus because I played a fighter.
Prestige system.
Yeah, but you can take the same character and anytime over level 20, you can start over with a bonus and play an entire different class and race, an entire different play style. My main character has played every single class except for 2 currently, because they have regular reincarnation where you get to level 20, go back to level 1 and you get a bonus depending on your class. Then they have racial reincarnation, which you get to level 20, go back to level 1, and you get a bonus depending on what race you played. They have epic reincarnation, which you get to level 30, go back to level 20, and you get a bonus depending on which epic past life you choose. And then you can go from 30 to 20 to 1 and start over again. Then if you have every single class at least once, and they all stack up to 3 times, you get a special feat that you get for free called Completionist, which gives you +2 to all your stats and +2 to all your skills.
So it's necessary.
It's not necessary.
How is completion is not necessary for builds?
I can take a first life character, and if I build it a specific way, I can play the hardest difficulty, which they go from solo, which is you don't group up with anybody, you go through the dungeon, it's real easy. Normal, which is also real easy. It used to be, back when the game first came out, normal was like slightly
hard,
difficult,
yeah.
and then hard was like you need a party, and then epic was like good luck. Nowadays, you can take a first life character through epic and steamroll some of the old quests. New quests will actually give you a challenge, but they're going back, and even though it's a 16-year-old game, it's still getting updated. They're updating old quests.
That's surprising
and stuff
too.
like
Do
that.
you think that like games should stay in a state, or do you think that they have to be updated
No,
for you to
I
continually
think-
enjoy them?
I think for an MMO specifically, things need to keep changing.
Really? I hear people like, especially like World of Warcraft, they like complain that it doesn't feel like the old days. This doesn't feel like the World of Warcraft I used to know.
These are people looking through rose-colored glasses. Like I said, I played it. I played it solo though, which that's another thing. DDO can be played solo or in a group. You can succeed either way. But I played World of Warcraft solo, and I remember vanilla WoW, and there are some really shitty things, quality of life upgrades that you didn't get till later. These are people with rose-colored glasses remembering the time that they were in high school playing with their friends going, this was the best time of my life. And yeah, it might have been, but there's still shitty things that existed that they fine-tuned and made better. For DDO, they take some of their old, they take groups of their old quests, and they're like, now it's worth running, it's worth more experience, they give better loot, the challenges aren't just like I walk through and everything dies, like they're keeping up with the power creep essentially. But like if you want to be the most powerful you can, you have to do every single class 3 times, every single race 3 times, every single epic past life 3 times, and they're currently working on legendary stuff. Like I said, the level cap right now is 32, but really every single level has 5 tiers because you hit it and get a bump to put into something.
Do you not get burnt out playing through the game that many times though?
It's interesting. There are enough quests that you don't do the same quest every single life. because it's a 16-year-old game. They keep putting out new quests. Some of them are free to play, some of them you have to pay for. As a VIP, I don't pay for anything. Ever since COVID came out, other than 2023, every year they've released a code that you can put into their store, and it gives you every single non-expansion quest into your account to be played. Ever since COVID, they're like, even if you haven't paid us for it, we understand these old quests, not a lot of people want to run them. They don't want to spend money. The new players don't want to spend money on quests that people don't run. You put in this code, we'll give every single quest that's out currently outside of expansions to you for free. I can take my character and I can run probably 3 lives before I have to repeat the same quest. But every time you do, the reason that I don't get burnt out is because my playstyle changes. One time I will play a melee character, whether it's a 2-handed fighter, dual-wielding ranger, or a single weapon fighting bard, which is what a swashbuckler is. Then you can go to, I play a ranged character. I'm going to play an arcane archer ranger, or I'm going to play a horizon walker, whatever class, or I'm going to play with crossbows. They all play differently. And then you can go, I'm going to play a spellcaster. You can play an instant death caster. You can play a elemental. There's all 4 different elements. They all play differently. I can play a sorcerer like that. I can play a cold druid, a poison druid. I can play a fire sorcerer. I can play an arcane wizard. I can play an insta-kill necromancer wizard. I can go in and play a warlock where they have their arcane blast. Or if I want to play a warlock a different way, they have one where it radiates out damage as their arcane blast, and you can still sword fight or do archery or whatever. Or they have an archetype, which they've started doing archetypes for classes. With the warlock, they have one where you become a demon as you progress. You're like breathing areas of fear damage, and they like take damage and get scared, and you can like half turn into a demon and claw things. Like, there are so many different play styles, and I can play the same character and it will continue to slowly get stronger, but I can change it. Anytime I get bored of it, I can change it into something different. There's Artificer, which you can set up turrets or play it as a melee character or a spellcaster or a ranged character. Like,
so how close was DDO to like how it is today to how it was like 10, 15 years ago? Is it the same game? Or is it completely different?
It is at its core the same in types of like combat, but they have made it better. 10, 15 years ago, their level cap was like 12 and you couldn't reincarnate. The end game was like this one raid that nobody really plays anymore because it's so outdated. They haven't gotten around yet to updating it. But you would play, and they didn't have enhancement trees back then. It was a very, very different game, but the gameplay itself was similar. It was an action-ish based RPG. Like I said, some classes, fighter, barbarian, rogue, they do the most damage just doing their basic attacks. But they just, like I said, released the Dragon Lord archetype for fighter, which archetypes are you play the same class, but you have different enhancement trees. So for fighter, their base one, they have Kensai, which is focused on one weapon type. They have Vanguard, which is I am a shield fighter and I deal damage with my shield. And they have Stalwart Defender, which is a shield fighter who's all about tanking. For Dragon Lord, they still have Stalwart Defender, but they replaced Kensai with the Dragon Lord tree, which is I can buff myself and my allies with these draconic auras that I have because I'm part dragon, and I can do dragon elemental damage in addition to my normal attacks. And then they replaced the Vanguard tree with the Barbarian's Ravager tree, which is like in Barbarian, it's all about going into a rage and dealing a ton of damage. In the Dragon Lord, they shifted some of the stuff. It's still the same name, but instead of meeting rage, it's I tap into my draconic ancestry and do like massive attacks and stuff like that.
So that's also another point I wanted to bring up too. Like, is there any role playing in this game? I know that Dungeons and Dragons is typically considered a role playing game, and World of Warcraft has like role playing servers.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, real quick. We're up on time, but I just want to know whether there's any actual role playing in the game.
In the past, when there were more people playing it, there was a large community who role played their characters. And there was also a large PvP community. Like in the taverns, there are places where you can go down and like, there are still people who host tournaments on servers and be like, hey, I'm going to give an award. You're 1v1ing this tournament here. Because there are so few people that still play the game, and I recommend just trying it out, even to see if you like it. Play it free to play. If you like it, go ahead and support it. It's a great game. It's constantly updated. But nowadays, there aren't a lot of people who do it, but there are still some people who either take the game slow, they do PvP, they do role-playing. The thing that really reinvigorated it is that about 2 times a year, they open a special hardcore server where if you die, your character's gone. And then they give like cosmetic rewards if you can for getting certain milestones. And like, when that happens, the game like explodes. Like the servers are insane.
Yeah, I think difficulty, especially for veteran players, is always like a good thing to kind of introduce to keep people like invested in the game.
Yeah, it is different enough from other MMOs and with enough diversity that it keeps my attention. Sometimes I'll put it down for a couple months just because my ADHD, I stopped caring about it because I'm focused on something else. But it is a game that I continuously go back to. I've been playing for over 10 years.
So then let's go ahead and move on to our last question for today then. Which is, we're getting to the best part here. Who would you cast in a Netflix adaptation of your comic book stories? For those who don't know, Brad is a writer.
Yeah,
writer for comic.
I mentioned it at the beginning.
You did mention in the beginning?
Yeah, during my intro. I believe I mentioned it. It might have been one of the other 2 takes that we didn't use. Can you see this?
Yes.
All right. This is the only one that's currently I have a copy of. This is one of the comic books that I've wrote. It's Primal number 6 by Maelstrom Media Comics. It's a small, but actually fairly lucrative, like successful comic book company. I write for them. I don't know if it was just issue 1 or issue 1 and 2 of War Dance that I also wrote. I'm doing issues 1 through 4 of that, and then 1 through 4 of the Vigilant. Yeah, the Vigilant for him.
Who's him?
His name is Eric. Oh God, what's his last name? Hold on, I've drank too much.
Shot number 6, baby.
Yeah, shot number 6. Eric, his brother.
It's on,
okay,
isn't
hold
it on there? Cheat.
Oh, Marcelo. Yes. No, Marcelo. No, sorry. Nelson. I saw Marcelo Bravo at the top. But Eric Allen Nelson is the guy who I work for. He is in charge of Maelstrom Media Comics, which is mature rated. There's nudity and gore. He also runs Spank Monkey Press, I think is what it is, which is an adult.
No kidding, with a name like that.
I don't believe you. Pull it up.
If you pull it up, you can show like covers. No, like the covers themselves are suggestive but not explicit.
If you find
I'm
anything
afraid to
worth
type
showing.
Spank Monkey at all.
But I work for him. He had Primal going before I started working for him. I did issue number 6 for him. I also did issue number 2 or 3 of one that will never see the light of day, which guts me because I think it's actually the best thing I've ever written.
Oh, that's the worst.
The issue was with Marcelo, which was the co-owner. He owned that idea specifically, and now they've split up, and Marcelo isn't allowing him to use Star Valkyrie anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have repurposed the storyline for one of his other works that isn't even talked about publicly yet, but it's going to be a 4-issue comic book for the Vigilant, and I've repurposed the basis of it, but it's different. Star Valkyrie was like Conan the Barbarian in space. The Vigilant is like a American superhero team that can get deployed across America, and like the villain, who is my favorite character in that thing, has I transferred him over here because I thought that a eldritch alien who views himself as master of the arts was too good not to use.
Yeah.
Because in the original one, he that will never see the light of day was while at a bar, these space dark elves show up and like, hey, we want you to find this person who went missing. So they take their crew to a ship graveyard because a lot of people have been going missing recently, and like, so they go there, and like there's this ancient eldritch alien who is millennia old who got bored of life, so he keeps switching between different types of art. He's done literally everything, and his current obsession is flesh crafting, so he's been stealing people and molding them into monsters and putting on an art display.
Like the human centipede.
Kind of, but in fact, there is actually a giant centipede made of people, but it's not like 3 people mouth to anus. It's like he took them apart and then put them back together, and this alien centipede's legs are like rib bones and stuff like that. It was like kind of body horror.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, meets Conan the Barbarian, and but in space. So it was a blending of the genres, and it was fun and fun to write. And there was comedy in it and stuff like that. And I feel like I outdid myself, but now it can't be out there. But I took that villain and took a similar premise and put it into a future comic book that's going on, which is the Vigilant that he has. And it's a superhero group, and they get called in by a senator and be like, hey, we had some problems with this town in the Midwest, United States. I sent a local superhero, but he also vanished. So I'm escalating this. Can you check it out? And they go and find out that this town is fucked up and like has all this body horror stuff going on. It's going to be a 4-part issue instead of just a single issue, which is the biggest thing with the first one. So that's sometime. I don't know his release schedule, but that's going on.
Let's say that Netflix, I don't know how they do this, but let's say that Netflix comes up to you, some of their media managers, and like, hey, we want to turn this into a Netflix special.
So I've thought about this, and it's not one that I've already written for Maelstrom Media, but my hope is that I can eventually save up enough with my other writing partner who isn't involved in Maelstrom Media, but we've been creating stories and writing this down for years. Like, we planned this for years. We have enough stuff to go 60 plus issues right now if we did no other work.
60 issues.
Yep.
Goodness.
We have a unique, it's our own storyline, our own universe. I have talked about it with Eric, the owner of Maelstrom Media, and he adores the way that I do my Heaven and Hell. Like, he's never heard anything like it. It's unique. I can't say anything about it because it's not patented yet, but there is a character who I can't name.
Bob Robertson.
We'll call him Bob for now.
Bob.
He is a character who is a superhero. He's the first person you see in issue 1. And he's very interesting. He's the comedic backbone of the group that we involve. And the person who I think right now, if I had to pick right now, it was going on, who would play him the best is the person who played Spencer in iCarly.
I'm pulling a picture.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much iCarly. I did watch some Disney Channel stuff, but
that was Nickelodeon. I think he would be a perfect stand-in for Bob.
There you go, America. That's Bob Robertson.
Time to take your reprisal.
I think he has a decent build for the character, and he has great comedic timing. He was one of the best parts of the iCarly show.
Yeah.
I've also seen him topless due to some of that Dan Harmon bullshit. You know, the Dan
You
Dan
don't
Harmon
have to
stuff.
preface it, Brad. If you've
No,
looked
no,
him up
hold on.
topless, I totally understand.
Hold on.
Topless.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm not doing it.
do it.
No, it's on YouTube.
He's in good shape, is what I mean. Like, I don't think he would need to put a lot of effort in to be a superhero.
Yeah.
I see.
But you know the Dan Harmon controversy that's going on with.
Which one's Dan Harmon again? I know
Dan
that name.
Harmon did a lot of Nickelodeon shows.
Yeah.
And apparently he was molding teenage, preteen girls and being really creepy around them. There's a whole thing with Dan Harmon.
I don't know any of this.
Anyhow, from the behind the scenes stuff that I've been seeing recently, he was really good at like diverting his attention away from like
The main
Jeanette
actresses.
McCartney and Miranda Cosgrove, like keeping him away from them whenever he was around. You could tell in every single behind the scene video when Dan Harmon showed up and he was on screen that he hated him.
Yeah.
Like you could see it in his eyes that he would, if he had the opportunity, he would just beat the fuck out of him. But
Well, yeah, because he had to protect 2 young girls from him.
yeah,
Motherfucker.
and some young boys. Like I've seen videos with him around the other 3 members of iCarly, and they're all like having fun and having a good time. And I've seen Dan Harmon like doing the video recording and showing up, and like the girls are like really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The atmosphere changes.
There was one where he was like, he shows up and Jeanette McCartney's like, I was trying to stay away from you, and she just bolts. And then he's like, hey, start looking at me or whatever. The reason I saw him topless is because Dan Harmon was like videotaping some stuff and just walked in on him changing into his stuff. He had a towel on and nothing else. He's like, dude, I'm getting ready for a scene. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And just stands there. And he's like, what? And there was another one where Miranda Cosgrove and him are talking, and he's nearby, and he's like trying to get their attention, and you can tell they're like trying to ignore him, but he's being too obstinate. He's like, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? And Miranda Cosgrove is like, summertime. And he's like, no. And then he's like, it's 3 o'clock. He's like, I'll fucking kill you. And he's like, but anyhow, I think he's got great comedic timing
and situation diffusal skills.
yeah. So I think he would be great for the most comedic member of that cast. There is another character who is one of my 2 favorites in my personal storyline that we have going on, who doesn't show up until the 2nd or 3rd arc. I can't remember what it is. And I think currently, if I had to pick right now, the guy who played Robb Stark would be a good character for him.
You're talking about from Iron Man and the Avengers?
Robb Stark.
No, from Game of Thrones.
From Game of Thrones, yes.
That's not even what his dad's name was.
I can't think of his name.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah, I think he has a great look. He has a good build, and I've seen him not only in this, but I've also seen him in, what was it, The Eternals? And I think he could play
That role was
character.
dead, by the way.
I know they canceled the Eternals 2. They canceled what was it? Guardians of the Galaxy 4. They canceled the 3rd Captain Marvel movie. They're not happy that they're not doing well at the box office. And I'm like, I don't know if people have superhero fatigue, but I think that if you make good movies, people will see them. And I can't say that any of the recent movies were
I
that
would watch
good.
so many Doctor Strange movies, but like,
Oh, I loved Multiverse. Yeah, Multiverse of Madness. I loved what they did with a PG-13 horror film, because that's what Multiverse of Madness was. Scarlet Witch was terrifying as a villain. Her coming out of the mirror dimension was like as creepy as I think you could do. I love horror. I don't care for gore. And that's what I think American movies do badly on horror movies, is that they're like, it's horror, we gotta show so much blood. I love Korean and Japanese movies, horror movies, because it's more psychological, more like subtle. I don't need like Hostel or Saw where you just see geysers of blood. It's like, why? That doesn't
Right. Like, to me,
yeah.
I feel like Coraline is more scary than a Saw movie. Because
love
Saw is just
Coraline.
gore, right?
Yeah.
But Coraline's like there's this woman who lives in your walls who's trying to steal you from your parents.
Yeah.
And
It's-
sew button in your eyes. Like,
I
oh my
don't-
God,
I
that's
don't-
terrifying.
I'm not.
I've never seen Coraline. That sounds terrifying.
You haven't seen Coraline? Oh my God, it's amazing. To be with the other mother, you have to replace your eyes with buttons.
But don't worry, because she gives you cakes and candies, and her world is wonderful and beautiful, and she'd
Yeah,
never do anything
until
to you.
you look deeper.
So if you sew the buttons on your eyes, you get rid of your original eyes underneath them? Or
Yeah, your eyes are gone. You have buttons. And
Can you
I don't
still
mean like
see?
push buttons, but like
Yes, you can
shirt
still
buttons.
see.
You can still see?
but then you're stuck in the other world. And
I mean, what does she give you?
Coraline-
Is it
You get to stay with her and be her
get to stay with
favorite
her.
baby child.
It
Nothing
is-
will
is
happen
it
to you.
delicious food?
fantastic.
Is it delicious food at least?
yes,
At
that is
first.
one of the things. It's
What's the
delicious food.
advantages of staying in the normal world in Coraline?
Okay, so Coraline is a ignored preteen girl, and she hates everything that's going on. She moves to this new place. Her parents are too busy to pay attention to her. She's doing this thing. There's this kid who she doesn't really like, but kind of whatever.
She
All
trying
her-
to fuck.
No,
go ahead.
No,
I mean,
no.
no. But, and
He's
then
like
they
an
have
annoying
these
little
like
boy,
weird
basically.
neighbors, and they keep getting her name wrong. They call her Caroline, and her name is Coraline, but they don't listen to her. Nobody listens to her.
Yep.
She doesn't get anything.
that
No
sounds-
attention.
Yeah, she gets no attention, and anything she wants, nothing really happens. Everyone just like talks over her, ignores her. But then at night, the other mother comes and takes her to the other world, and she gets whatever it's like living a fantasy. And you can stay with the other mother if you sew these buttons where your eyes were
And stay with her forever.
and stay with her forever.
Yeah, we had to cut out there for a second there, but yeah, we're at the end of the show, so feel free to any last thoughts on it. What was the last thing you was talking about?
The last question was, who would you cast in a Netflix adaptation of
Yeah.
your comic
Yeah,
book?
we
Which
had
we
that,
did
but
kind of.
we moved on to horror.
We were talking about like horror and stuff like
Yeah,
that, but
Yep.
I was saying how I'd fist fight anyone in Hollywood that disagreed with me.
About the jump scares.
Yeah. You'd be surprised at how often I recommend me fist fighting a group of people.
Brad versus the world, baby.
I've talked about to my wife fist fighting all of Congress one at a time until. But yeah, Hollywood too. Anyone who thinks that jump scares and excessive gore are a good replacement for real horror or suspense or whatever, I'm willing to fist fight them too.
all right.
And I'm
Address-
also saying that
address
because
down
I've been
below.
drinking.
You can email him down below with your challenge if you
Yeah,
want.
I will take all comers. I don't care if you're 12 feet tall and 700 pounds. I'll die, but I'll still try.
You ever see what happened with that battle of, was it like the Kyles or the
Yeah. The battle wasn't. Hold on. Didn't they decide that like the 12-year-old
Yeah.
who was in the group was gonna just be the only Kyle?
Yeah.
who was it Kyles or
It was.
don't
I think it
remember.
was Kyle's.
Battle of the let me look.
it might have been Kyles, it might have been something else, but
Battle.
Kyle sounds right. The ball
the
is
same. So it's having battle of the same name people or some shit like that.
Josh fight. There it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
The Battle of the Joshes. I think they have a video of him like holding up the kid.
Hundreds
Oh,
of
hold
people.
on. I don't have my earbud.
I don't even know if we'll need earbuds for this.
Nah.
But
If you can read it, Tim, we can't see the text at the bottom on
look
here.
at the number of people in Spider-Man outfits. This event was planned by Josh Swain from Arizona and took place on April 24th. This is hilarious that they all have pool noodles. I can't.
Josh.
Probably wondering why I've gathered you here because we all share the same names.
Everyone else has to change that.
I can promise you, none of these people changed their
No,
names.
but it was a good time. It's just like the Area 51 thing that just turned into a party.
There he is.
Yeah.
Tiny Josh. The one Josh to rule them all.
Tiny Josh.
Aw.
What a champion. But the one thing I will say about that, this kid is not the victim. Because it was Josh Swain, not Josh, whatever the hell this
Tiny
kid.
Josh.
Yeah. it's-
Tiny Josh the Pretender.
Yeah, he's a pretender to the throne. It was battle between Josh
Hold on.
Swain's.
Is it better to be good or lucky? Because he was lucky that he was young when it happened.
Luck is the strongest stat you can have in any video
Exactly.
game.
actually
That's
really
why
true.
he won.
Yeah.
Because he was so young when it happened. The luck of that made him the victor. The other one who you talked about is the victor who was good at it, but
Put
he
the
wasn't
most
lucky.
effort in.
He put the
Really
most effort
organized
in,
the
but
damn
he
thing.
still didn't win.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Shot Takes. I've been Tim. That's been Brad.
Yeah, and I will probably continue to be Brad unless there's a battle and I lose.
The battle of the Brads.
And that's been Dave. And this has been Shot Takes. Think responsibly, viewers.
Think
There you
responsibly.
go.
Don't drink and make choices. That's a bad idea.
Bye.
Bye.